4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Who doesn't love a little extra drums? I'm Rob Astorino, in for Steve Malzberg, and we will talk to Jennifer Rubin in just a moment, but who am I? Well, I'm filling in for Steve. Steve and I used to work together here in New York City on radio at WABC, and so we share the same kind of opinions and sort of right brain kind of friendship with Steve and I, and I'm thankful for him for letting me sit in for a little while here to be with you coast to coast right here on Newsmax TV. So I'm also running for governor in the state of New York on the Republican conservative ticket, and check out how we're going to beat Andrew Cuomo right here in New York at robastorino.com. All right, Jennifer Rubin joins us. She is a columnist and author of the Right Turn blog at the Washington Post. You know, the Washington Post, that real conservative newspaper. So Jennifer, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Nice to meet you.
Nice to talk to you too. So there's, I mean, there are so many things we can talk about right now, and we'll start with Hillary Clinton because she's a big topic right now in the country. She lives near where I live. She's in Westchester County. She's on her book tour. In fact, this weekend in her town in Chappaqua, she's going to be at the library, and there's going to be people lined up around the block to get her autograph and to talk to Hillary Clinton about what's in her book and whether she'll run for president and all this other stuff. So what do you make of this fascination? And I have to say, you know, I've talked to Hillary Clinton several times. I've marched in parades with her for Memorial Day, and I've had chances to just sort of chat with her. And, you know, in my experience, she's been very friendly to me, very nice to me. I don't agree with her on anything on her worldview, but what do you make of this fascination? And I can tell you, when I walk in these parades, and there are maybe thousands of people lined up, all you hear, it's like fawning. Hillary, I love you, Hillary. What do you make of this whole fascination with the Clintons, but especially Hillary Clinton?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad you chose this topic to start off with because I love this story. She has been so awful, so horrendous in this book tour that even the mainstream media is going after her. My paper, The Washington Post, which you alluded to is no conservative journalistic enterprise, had a great front page story on all their worth and all their wealth for people who were broke, in Hillary's words.
Dead broke.
Dead broke. She has a great reputation, and there's a certain age of women, there's a certain ilk of women who think she's great, who identify with her or liked her when she was First Lady or what have you, and they're very devoted. But truth be told, she is a woman of very poor political skills, and in comparison to her husband, it's like night and day. And I think that is coming out. She is not adept on her feet. She is prone to get rattled and defensive and a little bit nasty when she's challenged. You remember she went off after that NPR reporter who asked her about her views on gay marriage. And she doesn't have anything to talk about, and that may be the worst problem of all. The reason we're all talking about how wealthy she is and what a phony she is to pretend she's not wealthy is because she doesn't really have anything else to say about the country. She just wants to be president because she's a big celebrity, and we should all vote for Hillary Clinton.
Which, by the way, may be enough with the electorate to get her into office, because that's all we care about these days, apparently, is celebrity. I mean, if the Kardashians can't run for president, then Hillary would probably be best to run. Is that what they're saying?
I think, there's a certain mentality that says that that's true.
Yeah.
The good news, I think, is that the country realizes we're going to hell in a handbasket, and the president's ratings are sinking really horrendously, and the foreign policy of her and her successor and her boss is widely perceived, I think correctly perceived, as a complete bust, and very, very dangerous. So I think there is a chance that we may have a more serious election than perhaps the one we did in 2008, that celebrity status won't mean everything. But by the same token, Republicans should be very much aware that you can't beat something with nothing.
That's right.
And we're going to have somebody who's a quality candidate. Doesn't mean they have to be a charismatic star, but they have to be a quality candidate that can relate to ordinary people on a very basic, very emotional level. And we can have the smartest guy in the world, the best debater in the world, the most ideological, pure guy in the world, but unless he can or she can in some way relate to people, perhaps maybe even in a more intimate, more effective way than Hillary Clinton, we could absolutely lose the White House once again.
What difference does it make, right?
Yeah,
In the words of Hillary Clinton, of course it makes a big difference. Hillary Clinton, I think, is not a slam dunk to become the nominee. But if she does become the nominee, she's no slam dunk, in my opinion, of becoming president. Because, yes, she does, I think, have a lot of baggage. I think the people of this country might be ready to move on to something different, something new. Perhaps a governor who has a lot of executive experience. You're looking at the field right now, Democrat and Republican. If it's not Hillary Clinton, who could possibly win the nomination? And on the Republican side, who would give the best run for the money for the Republicans?
This is her greatest protection, I think, is that there really isn't anybody else on the Democratic side. Their bench is so thin, and there's such a drop in quality, just in terms of professionalism. I don't want to talk about ideas or, sort of character issues, but there's such a drop in candidate quality and preparation between Hillary and whoever else would come next, that there's a good argument for just keeping her because they have nobody else. So why don't we go with the person that they know is a sure thing in their minds and who they are very comfortable with. So it's hard to think of someone, but frankly, can you imagine if your state's current governor ran on the Democratic side?
Well, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen, by the way, Jennifer, by beating
exactly.
him.
Well, he might be out of job, so maybe he'll be looking for a job.
That's exactly the point here. So, if it's Clinton, let's say it's Hillary Clinton, if it's Jeb Bush, if he decides to run, and I think Jeb Bush is a very credible candidate, I think he did a very good job as governor in Florida, do you think the people in this country are going to sort of roll their eyes, though, like, are you kidding me? Bush, Clinton, can't we come up with anything else?
I think they will, but by the same token, Jeb's biggest help probably would be running against Hillary, because at least it would be a wash. The country would say, okay, well, we have to choose one of them. Now let's see what they have to offer the country.
Right.
So I think Jeb is a very strong candidate, maybe stronger than some people think. He hasn't been in office for a while. Those of us who are old enough to remember him, who have covered him for a number of years, know he's a guy who's very comfortable in his own skin, who can be very charming one-on-one, but can also light up a room. So I think he is a strong candidate. It's not clear to me exactly that he's going to run at this point. You alluded to governors, and I think some of our strongest potential candidates are governors. The one that I'm keeping my eye on, slightly lower profile than some of the others, is Mike Pence. He was a great congressman from Indiana. He's now governor. He's sort of a complete package. He's a devoted person in terms of faith and family and the life issue, but at the same time, he's wonderful on foreign policy, very tough, and he's been a very good steward of that state's economy and their fiscal situation. So someone like that, who's well-spoken, definitely charismatic, well-liked by all factions of the Republican Party, I could absolutely see rising to the occasion. And the other guy I think we have to keep in the back of our mind is Paul Ryan. He's, I think, intentionally done a pretty good job of keeping his name out of the headlines. But if some of these higher caliber candidates, for whatever reason, decide not to run, there may be, in fact, a party that turns to him only because he's a known quality. They know he's ethical, they know he's a decent person, they know he's a conservative, and he certainly has experience. So I wouldn't completely eliminate somebody who's inside the Beltway, because I think Paul Ryan, ultimately, if he runs, would be a very impressive candidate.
If the Republicans don't have a circular firing range, I think we're in a great position, because I think we've got exciting candidates who are new enough to the national scene with a great record in their own states or own office that it'll be a very big dichotomy between sort of the been there, done that scandal and baggage of the Clintons versus the newness, if you will, of people who've actually made a difference doing what they're supposed to do in their state. So I'm not writing off the Republicans. I think they've got a great shot, especially after 8 years of what we're dealing with right now in the Obama administration. A couple other things. The IRS scandal in the last minute and a half or so. Why is this being sort of, you know, laughed off or not getting the attention it should? I mean, what's happening there is frightening. And, you know, for everyday Americans, the IRS is something that's hated to begin with. And yet they're sort of getting away with not murder, but just about, and seemingly they're going to get away with it.
I don't know if they're going to get away with it. And you're right, the mainstream media, big surprise, is sort of ignoring the scandal like they do all the Obama scandals. But if you look at the polling, people are really upset about it. Upwards of 70% in recent polling think it's a very big deal. People hate the IRS for very good reason. And let me tell you, when the IRS comes calling on you, have they ever misplaced a document? Are they ever missing any data? So the notion that when it's really important that we find out information about them, suddenly computer crashes everywhere, missing emails, it just strains one's credibility to the breaking point. So I think people do think it's a scandal. I think they are up to something that is very unpleasant, which is targeting people for their political beliefs and then covering up. And I think the pressure is going to increase on a special prosecutor, particularly if the Republicans capture the Senate, in which case then you're going to have two houses of Congress that are pretty much up in arms. So I think that of all of the scandals, in some ways, is the most potent, simply because the average person understands the IRS is a rotten group of people sometimes. 3 dirtiest letters in the English alphabet. Jennifer, thank you very much for being with us. You know, next time the IRS sends me a form or says we're going to audit you, I'm just going to say I can't find that receipt for 6 years ago and see what happens. Up next, the Malzberg panel, right here on Newsmax TV.